Thank you so much, sir, yet another for this interesting lecture. We are open to questions now, if the audience have any questions. Let me ask my question because you don't have the mic, and by the time the mic will be ready and you can ask. So we're just getting it ready. So in the meantime, if you don't mind, can you answer my question?
Yeah.
So you spoke about film literacy in your first lecture. So I don't know whether you would agree with me or not, but how much of it is also part of attitude adjustment as far as Indian audience view cinema or they consume cinema? Would attitude adjustment be part of this film literacy which you spoke of in your first lecture? Attitude adjustment. Attitude adjustment. The public which is consuming cinema, as we see cinema as entertainment or as an art, so would it be part of film literacy according to you?
No, you cannot dictate terms to your audience at all. That is very simple, and that is where the role of film literacy comes. You prepare. The audience does not come from nowhere. You have to prepare. You have to educate them. Educating is part of literacy, Educating is part of literacy. So you have to educate them. It is not as if it will come out of nowhere. So I don't know whose attitude you are talking about. If you are talking about the attitude of the audience will know or will frame out for itself what to expect out of cinema, depending on what is the range, what is the menu they are served. If your menu consists of only third-rate items, you will be forced to pick up from one of them, or they will walk out of that dinner or that restaurant or whatever it is. See, if it is completely disagreeable, they will walk out of it. But if it is agreeable to some extent, then they will choose the best out of it. So it's a what you call iterative process. In that iterative process, the muck at the top gets filtered out, and if you persist with good cinema in terms of how you make it available, whether it is through the audiovisual medium, controlled audiovisual medium, or open cinema houses or malls and so on and so forth, it will all depend on that. The audience will automatically adjust its attitude, because as I said, I think that's the best parallel that I can give you. The menu that is served, that's the best.
Thank you so much, sir.
Good evening, sir. My name is Ragini and I'm a research scholar in the Department of English, this university. Thank you for such an engaging talk. And I have two questions from you, one related to cinema, popular culture, and one related to the institutionalization of theatres in general. So, in the first session, you were talking about how Hindi songs are part of popular culture, but not Hindi cinema. Okay. So, what I mean from that, including Hindi cinema and popular culture, is because the cinema mass appeal that forms a part of low culture, low art, that a vast audience of almost all sections of our society, from rickshawala to a domestic help who works in our houses and like she's mopping the floor, watching Doordarshan or any of the films that are screened on television. So how can we not take Hindi films as part of the popular culture, because it has shaped our society in such a way that the impact of Bollywood is impeccable, even though it's not like high form of art. And second question, if you would like to answer it, or should I ask the second also?
First, let me answer this question.
Sure.
Okay. This is something which we were also discussing during the break. There are, of course, several other attributes which need to be taken into consideration when you are defining popular culture. But, say for example, when I go out from here on a walk back to my guest house, I'll break into a song from one of the old Hindi films or something like that, My body will start gyrating. Or when I go to my room, take a shower, I'll probably be humming an old Hindi film number or a serial number or something like that. It doesn't cost me anything to do that. My identification is completely autonomous and natural. Okay? But when you talk about cinema, when you talk about film, it is not like that. One of the prime prerequisites of popular culture is that it should be born out of popular and participation without any barriers to entry. There should be no barriers to entry. There is no cinema that comes to you that is free. Okay? Even if it is cinema that you are seeing on television, your television is never free. Just the very cost of that set. It's an evolution of technology over a period of time, and from the time of silent films to OTT platforms today, there's been big leaps of technology. But technology is not free. It is never free. That's a kink in your mind if you think that technology comes free to you. So, Hindi film songs, which anybody can hum anywhere, there are no barriers to entry, there are no designated performing spaces or anything of that kind, that are the basic attributes of popular culture. Okay? But that's not the same with cinema.
Thank you, sir. My second question is in relation to the institutionalization of theatre in general. Like you were talking about the theatre culture in London, which is huge. But don't you think that it is also leaving out certain sections of society? Because when Shakespeare was staging the plays, it was meant for all sections of society, and mostly it was not attended by the aristocrats. It was the people who were, working, belonged to working class backgrounds.
But whoever said that theatre is for the masses? Theatre can be for the masses also, but theatre can also be an elite art form. That distinction has always existed. We are talking about the arts in general. I'm not talking from a Marxist point of view, or I'm not talking from a communist point of view. There are these distinctions. There's no doubt about it. And personally, if you ask me, on any given occasion, I would prefer to go attend a show in West End and see a particular play there compared to, let's say, popular plays which are rehearsed and performed in many other locations in this country. But that does not say that there is no legitimacy to elite culture.
Yeah.
Culture is there. You do your own morphology of culture according to the way you look at it.
Yeah, sure, sir. You are right about this. But don't you think that we also leave a vast majority of of the rural audiences, like in West Bengal or in Orissa, they consume a lot of community theatres that are specific to the places. We also kind of leave those things from our culture and we look up to Western models. Don't you think that we are...
No, I completely agree with you that we do not have to look at the Western models. We just do not have to look at the Western models. And there's been a lot of indigenous theatre, indigenously developed theatre in our own country, and there are some indigenous institutions locally developed. For example, my old guru and mentor, late Professor Anantamurthy, Professor Anantamurthy, he mentored along with Prasanna a completely innovative institution in the western Karnataka, a place called Hegudu. You should go and see what they are doing. Experimental theatre to popular theatre, all kinds of things. Similarly, for example, the Jatra of Bengal, this gentleman called, I'm again forgetting the name, as you get on in years, recall is a very difficult thing. But his book is called Rehearsals of Revolution. This is on the Jatra tradition of Bengal. He wrote it in the early 80s. So there are all kinds of, in the arts, you can't make the distinction. You can't make that distinction You cannot preclude one set of viewers from going into the other domain. You know, that mobility has to be there across various cross sections of arts. And I am not constructing the morphology of what is better art or what is an inferior art. I am not constructing that morphology. I think this notion itself is antithetical to the world of arts.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And there is no language barrier. You can also ask questions.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. The first.
Sir,
No.
Thank you for two very engaging and very interesting lectures. Certainly it's opened up my imagination and thinking to so many issues that one was honestly not even aware of. But what is to be said about the government itself and its role in keeping cinema and many other things from entering the public discourse? See,
Keeping?
what is to be said about the government itself as the main agent that keeps cinema and many other sort of cultural expressions like that out of range of public discourses or becoming public discourses?
I think you're not listening very keenly to the words in between the lines. I had said a lot, and the less said, the better about what our government
Yes,
does.
then what are the modalities then? Why the point is that the problem has to be solved through so many dissertations and so many discussions in the university. I will give you an example. I mean, if you take archaeology, the establishment of archaeology, I'm an archaeologist, so I can speak for the archaeology part of our national culture not becoming a public discourse because of the heavy government stamp on it. So much so that universities do tremendous amount of research on the ancient past, the prehistoric past, the medieval past, and it barely filters through into the government and into their policy making. It seems to have a mind of its own that is churning out mediocrity since one has observed it.
What
for the
seems
last
to have a
decade.
mind of its own?
The government machinery involved in preservation of archaeological heritage or popularization of
Are you talking about the
archaeological...
Archaeological Survey of India?
Just as an analogy, yes, of course. So also with film perhaps that it is the government, वो government ही आड़े आ रही है उसके public discourse बनने में.
फिल्म में तो सबसे बड़ी बात है कि you can't, nobody is asking you to support film making. But film education, the government can come in a very big way. As far as archaeology is concerned, again, I do not know whether you think the number of institutions or the quality of institutions in the domain of archaeology is are sufficient to sustain it at a certain level of quality that compares with the best in the world.
Well, the real problem that faces us in such realms, even in perhaps cinema, is that there is no two-way communication that is happening. It is a one-way flow of ideas,
So, to a great extent, that is your political failure. That is your political failure. And by political failure, I am not talking about the failure of a particular party. Politics is what? Politics is all that you do to be able
Well, it
to...
is just insensitivity. I mean, if you, even in cinema from the 60s, we have all watched films in the theatre. Everything started with the films division documentary about what the Prime Minister did.
You know, when you use the term that insensitivity, I am forced to take recourse to the good old proverb that we get what we deserve.
But we also inherit sometimes. I mean,
Yeah, so
the colonial framework of the
it is not
arts and
beyond the
culture.
realm of our abilities and our power to change that inheritance. We have changed, in many ways we have.
Good evening, sir. My name is Trija Bharadwaj and I am a PG Diploma student in translation. So, in line with Gitanjali ma'am's question, I want to ask a very basic question that who exactly is a film literate?
Is a film?
Literate. Who exactly is film literate?
Take an analogy from simple literacy, word literacy or literary literacy. Who would you call literate?
Somebody who can read and write and speak.
Read and write comes much later.
Yeah.
First you need to know the idiom. First you need to know the alphabet, the idiom, the grammar and syntax. It is literally the same with cinema also. You need to know the ABC of cinema, then you need to know the language of cinema, the idioms that are used in that language, and then you need to know the syntax of cinema. How you interpose, how you juxtapose, two shots, you juxtapose them in a particular way, they send out a certain meaning. You juxtapose them in a different way, they'll send out a different meaning. The pan, the tilt of the camera will, take on different meaning altogether. So you have to understand, as I said, the alphabet, the idiom, the language, the grammar, the syntax of cinema to call yourself film literate. And just as literacy has several layers, primary literacy, then secondary literacy, and literacy of a much high order. Similarly, in the world of cinema also, it is ordered in a hierarchical structure.
Okay, so I also have a second question. If we talk about the platforms, the OTT platforms that are there in front of us, for example Netflix, so if we see the kind of content Netflix puts out, and if we see the kind of programs that the Indian audience follow, it's not something to be proud of. I mean, if you see the top 10 shows which are trending in India, they are not something to be very proud of if we talk about the popular culture.
Top 10 shows on Netflix?
Yeah, in India. Like what are the shows that people watch in India which are trending? Second is another platform called Movie. So Movie is a platform which puts out cinema which is not known to Indian audience so much. So all the art cinema or all the parallel cinema comes under that. So the kind of movies the Indian audience watches and the demarcation that the providers are also putting forward. So don't you think that the audience as well as the providers both need to come to a common platform so that the audience can also gain a sense of film literacy and the providers are also brave enough to put forward this kind of content in front of the cinema?
Why do you think I've come and given you this lecture? I don't call myself an activist, okay? But at least I consider it my duty that, if it is within my resources and within my capability and capacity to share with you and inform the judgment, and inform judgment on the status of things, on the nature of things, then I should do it. That's all. And things will evolve from here. Some beginning has to be made. As Neil Armstrong said when he landed on the moon, every long journey, every big journey begins possibly with just a small step. I am making a reference to a very big deal. But that is how it is. We can't afford to be pessimists. And certainly not students of Banaras Hindu University, young students or young lecturers like you in an institution like this. So, you and me talking about this is creating that discourse. Hopefully, it will go spread out on the dining table in various hostels or guest houses and so on and so forth. So this was a way of looking at the world. Beyond a certain point, you obviously turn philosophical. Because that's the way it is. That's the way the world is ordered.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I do not have questions, but I have certain observations.
Identify yourself because it is being recorded.
Okay, so this is Dr. P. Dalai. I teach English here, and I teach a course called Cultural Studies. I mean, to be honest, for the first time I heard such intellectually stimulating discourses, live discourses on film studies, and that inspires me to ask, or rather share certain observations. My first observation is that, which is also related to Professor Ajay Kumar's comments, I think there is an epistemological break, and this break is between the people in Bollywood, I mean actors and producers, whoever they are, and then the government, government's institutions, of which obviously you have been the part, and the audience. And this break is deliberately created more by the people in Bollywood. For example, keeping certain things secret from the public.
Sorry?
From the public.
Keeping what?
Certain things related to film production or the Bollywood society or community as a whole. For example, one example I will say, when there was this, recently there was this firing at Galaxy, Salman Khan's house was attacked in Mumbai.
Yes.
So you have a whole set of common people, gathering there and looking at very curiously what is happening. So that curious part, though this is also related to other actors, other movies, the communities itself, we keep on wondering, who are these people? How do they look like, right? So there is some sort of exoticization of this community of actors or producers, which is responsible for this epistemological break, this what we call the communications between the people involved, the government and the audience. And this is, in my opinion, is responsible for this low rate of film literacy. Of late, because of YouTube and other things,
Don't blame the government where it is not rightful. Okay? Because if anything, the government interferes the least in the world of cinema because it is not capable of. Beyond the censor board, there is hardly any intervention of the government. Government is not capable. It is not capable of interfering meaningfully into that world.
Exactly.
Whether it is the world of culture or whether it is the world of cinema also as a larger part. It's not capable. It does not have the necessary intellectual wherewithal.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I was observing. The second thing is that from practical life, I have my colleague and my wife also, Mrs. Bengali, and I am from Odisha. So at home,
That I could make out.
yeah, at home we are divided because she watches all those elitist, aristocratic, Bengali film. Because that's what the Bengali film industry creates. Movies in Kolkata for Bengali babus and movies beyond.
Hoichoi.
Atrami they say. Okay? And for me, it is Govinda or it is some other romantic heroes. So this hierarchy that you are obviously mentioning about it is also created by the people who are involved in the production of movies or in the acting company. For example, of late, I was watching this Anurag Kashyap and others bringing in slangs or bringing in working class culture, mentality or things which are subaltern in nature into the mainstream movie. So in this connection I say, why there is a low rate of literacy is to be blamed on the people involved directly with the production of movie. So these are my observations, but I also want to know how is this group of new producers like Anurag Kashyap and there are a couple of others are accepted in the Bollywood community.
His
Bharadwaj and others.
See, one thing is there. The simplest thing that I say is that you can break rules only when you know what the rules are. Right? So Anurag Kashyap knows the rules.
Yes.
Okay? And he is highly respected for that.
Right.
That is the only thing that I can say. Whether he's been commercially successful or not, that is for you to decide. But he's made his own money. There's no doubt about that. He's made some hugely successful films, and some of them iconic.
Exactly.
Gangs of Wasseypur was
Yes,
an
that's what I'm a
iconic.
fan of that movie, and I talk to my students. So I think there is an intellectual turn, like we were taking film industry in Delhi to be talking on that. So there is an intellectual turn in Bollywood, which was basically subaltern romanticization and idealization of love and everything. So that was my observation, sir. I really like your lectures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Prashant Shukla. I don't have any question, I have two observations, and I hope that you can put them on a philosophical plane if they are of any interest. The lady just now quoted that the 10 top OTT films that we see on Amazon or whatever platform, they do not reflect Indian culture or they do not speak very highly about it. One of the largest audience of Pakistani plays is Indian audience.
Forget the plays, dear. Till a few years back, there was that channel, Pakistani channel, which has been banned in India now. What was it called? Zindagi. Zindagi. So, more Indians used to say Zindagi than Pakistanis, including my wife, who otherwise, thinks of herself as high culture,
So that is exactly what I was telling to show, that we may be very proud of our antecedents and precedents vis-a-vis Pakistan, but when it comes to having high quality entertainment in terms of drama and culture, language, sophistication, diction, then we have to take recourse to Pakistani plays and not the Saas and Bahu types of things with which people are fed up. So that is one observation. The other observation that I have, that in Latin America, there is a company called Telesur. It was made by a conglomerate of left-leaning leaders, including the one in, the one Hugo Chavez's successor, I'm forgetting.
Bolsonaro.
No, Hugo Chavez. Bolsonaro is in Argentina.
Sorry.
Hugo Chavez's successor. We forget to, these names are not no longer popular, but Erno or whatever he is called. So they have made their own channel and the government subsidizes and pays for that channel, and that is called Telesur. People might like to read more about it, and basically it is from a Latin American point of view that they want their culture, news, literature, history to be told to the masses, because most of the channels there are Western owned, which have their own interests which run counter to the interest of these countries. So here I gave two examples, one in the realm of culture, which is very close to our country, Pakistan, where we have a lot of serials there, and another example of a government funded television channel which counters a hegemonic culture which is contrary to the interest of the people. So that was just my observation.
Very valid observations.
Introduce yourself.
Good evening, sir. This side Gaurav. I am pursuing my master's from Department of English, Banaras Hindu University. As I come from the Kaimur district of Bihar, sir, I am concerned about the Bhojpuri language or Bhojpuri films. In cultural studies, as P.D. Dalai sir taught us that everything is part of the culture, but not all the thing. So my question is that in Bhojpuri films or songs, we find that it is famous for vulgarity. It is kind of people argued about all these things, it should be stopped. So don't you think that there should be some kind of censorship that should be imposed to bring out discipline and certain kind of filtering out of that vulgarity from the Bhojpuri language, Bhojpuri culture? Don't you think, sir?
My thinking or not thinking makes no difference. It is your thinking and people like you who think if it is that way, then you should articulate your views strongly enough for whoever it is to listen to and act upon it. That is where I will terminate my response to your observation or question. I am no one to say anything about that.
And there is a censorship.
If you feel strongly that Bhojpuri cinema has got, lot of obscenity, vulgarity and irrelevant material, then you should protest. There are various ways of protesting. You should at least articulate your views. I'm not even using a strong word like protest. At least articulate your views. If there are 100,000 people like you, literate people like you in the district of Kaimur, I'm sure things will change. I am very optimistic on that front. Things have changed because people started raising their voice, and that is one of the reasons why Bhojpuri cinema has had to take a back seat in the cultural realm of our nation, because it got stigmatized. It literally got stigmatized as the cinema of the underclass, so-called underclass. So if you feel strongly about this thing, as I said in my first lecture, you need to create a discourse about it.
Good evening, sir. My name is Harsh Srivastav and I am a student of MA Final in the Department of English. You said that not Hindi movies but Hindi songs are the part of popular culture because they are freely available to all. But don't you think that even songs are not free? You need to have a mobile, you need to have an internet connection, you need to have a Spotify premium subscription or Ghana subscription for that.
That's when you want to listen to it. That's when you want to listen to it. But if there is a song in your head, you can play it, you can dance, nobody prevents you from doing that. In popular participation, you don't need to pay a fee for it, That is what I meant.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. I am Ankit Kumar Dan and I am presently pursuing a PG diploma course in translation. So, first of all, thank you for such enriching lecture. And my question to you is, you quoted out Foucault when you were talking about discourse, and the two keywords which I could figure out was truth and knowledge. Now, putting this in reference, if we look at Indian cinema, the cinema which is being produced today, if you look particularly at some films like the Kerala Story, where there has been a kind of portrayal where 32,000 girls have been missing, where they are a prey to conversion, and so much so that the Supreme Court has to intervene in it, and the Supreme Court has to say that Supreme Court has to advise the filmmakers to add a disclaimer to it that the whole thing is a fictionalized one. So, does truth persist? How do you look at it?
That can be the story for another lecture. I just use the word in a very loose sense. Truth का तो expand करने लगोगे तो फिर कितना dimensions और कितना direction कितने interpretations हैं. So I am not looking at any narrow interpretation of truth in a very sort of functional way, not in a philosophical or ontological fashion. Just as we talked about creation of knowledge, basic knowledge, similarly, basic truth, not post-truth or all of that. That doesn't figure into the. In any case, if you are delving into the realm of Foucault's discourse, it's a very complicated subject. It's a very, very complicated subject. When does one discourse begin to find, when does it get transmuted into another discourse? The boundaries, the peripheries of discourse, the circumscriptions of discourse. Very complex issue. I was just using a functionally useful definition. That's all.
Good evening, sir. मेरा नाम प्रिंस है and I am a student of BA Honors Arts. I wanted to become a filmmaker. So, sir, अनुराग कश्यप अपनी एक इंटरव्यू में कहता है कि उसे पूछता है, वो बोलता है कि if you want to become a filmmaker, don't go to a film school. Sir, what are your views on that?
You posed a very tough question. If I was your age, I would have probably been able to answer it more comfortably. But whoever has seeded this notion in your mind, don't go to a film school, I think he's trying to fool you.
Okay, sir. Sir, I wanted to take an admission in FTIA, so I was looking for the previous year question paper, and sir, there are two kinds, subjective and objective. Subjective is good, I think, but in objective, I find very less question related to film and cinema. More questions just history of art and all that. So why that?
Unfortunately, it's been about 17, 18 years since I left that institution. But I do remember that there was this problem, and we tried to correct it midway through.
Yeah.
But you want this reformed, then you should write a letter to the director of the institute.
For that, I have to pass the entrance.
Huh?
For that, I have to pass the entrance, I think.
No, not at all.
Oh, it's just
You can write to the director.
okay. Nothing will happen then.
See, every competitive exam is more about eliminating people rather than selecting. Alright? That is the tragedy of our country. A country populated by 1.4 billion people. You know, selections take place at an even pace or in an even manner only when there are a reasonably limited number of clients or claimants. Okay, when claimants become too large, then there is no way of rationally selecting people. It is as true as any other thing that you can think of. It is as true as, what I call the fallacy of excessive choice, for example. When you have to select between this bottle and that bottle, 3 or 4 or 5, it is humanly possible to make a choice. But if you are given 1,000 bottles, you will never be able to make a rational choice, because your mind will go bonkers trying to make a rational choice. So similarly, in rational selection or in any sort of reasonable selection, the limitations are very heavy. That the number of contestants, the field should be limited. When the field is as large as 20,000 people participating in an exam for 30 seats in the Film Institute, it cannot be a rational decision. It just cannot be a rational decision. Nobody will tell you this, but I can tell you this. Okay, because I know the fact on the ground is that it is not possible for an institution with limited resources to weed out rationally people who are not deserving. Okay?
Hello sir, I am Shresh. I am studying linguistics at this university. My question is I'm sorry.
आराम से, this is a conversation. कोई ऐसा नहीं है इस बार.
When talking on teaching media literacy, how do we ensure that the people learning don't just agree with whatever the author is saying or the teacher is teaching, but also interpret their own sense? They follow the depth of the author kind of thing.
We can have a private conversation. Okay?
Sorry.
I'm not able to understand you.
Sorry.
Anybody else? This will be the last question.
Namaskaram, sir.
Oh,
No, please.
But we can have this conversation afterwards.
Just a small one. It's such a stimulating lecture.
Namaskaram sir. So this is Anamika Pandey, student of translation skills. Sir, firstly I'm not someone who is into so much of cinema, but by listening your interactive session, just a question that by seeing the current scenario of the influence of social sites or online platforms on public discourse, and we know that censorship is some kind of formality only, that is not something that can make standard values on public discourse. So somebody who is into cinema or who is inspired to go into this field, so being an individual, how it can navigate the fine line between preserving tradition and embracing modernity without going too much into bareness or overexposure or nudity over social media platforms.
Social media platform is a devil. You cannot control the devil. So what do you do with something that you cannot control? There are only two options available to you. Either you keep away from it completely, or you arm yourself sufficiently to be able to counter the devil when you need to counter it. Alright? Your question stands answered in this.
Actually,
So with this we've come to an end of today's two lectures by Sir, and we'll move to the last part of our program, which is a vote of thanks to be delivered by Professor Rajkumar, Coordinator, Intercultural Studies Center.
त्रिपुरारी जी के बोलने का तरीका ऐसा है कि जैसे जैसे आप उनको सुनते जाएंगे, उनको और ज़्यादा सुनने की आपकी इच्छा बढ़ती जाएगी। तो मैं जानता हूं कि अब तो आप फॉर्म में आए हैं कुछ पूछने और बात करने के और उनकी सुनने के, लेकिन एक समय की सीमा है और आगे अगली बार जब हम उनको बुलाएंगे तो फिर आप अपनी तैयारी रखिए ठीक से, उनसे वो बातें आप और विस्तार से पूछ सकते हैं। तो आप सभी की ओर से मैं त्रिपुरारी जी को बहुत ही धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करता हूँ, आभार प्रकट करता हूँ कि जैसे इस बार आज आए, आगे भी आए। और आप जानते हैं कि उनका एक उपन्यास इधर प्रकाशित हुआ है, हो सकता है कि उसके बहाने हम उनको जल्दी भविष्य में बुलाएं, या फिल्म कल्चर या फिल्म लिटरेसी के बारे में और भी जो आपके क्वेश्चंस हैं, जिज्ञासाएं हैं, उसके बारे में आप जानना चाहते हैं तो उसके लिए भी एक्सक्लूसिवली हम लोग बुला सकते हैं उनको। और आपको पता ही होगा कि इस तरह के प्रोग्राम्स हम पहले भी करते रहे। एक तो बायोस्कोप नाम से एक पूरा का पूरा वो हम लोग चलाते हैं, जिसमें कुछ फिल्में सेलेक्ट करते हैं, उसको स्क्रीन किया जाता है, उस पर बातचीत भी होती है। उसके अलावा फिल्म स्टडीज़ पर भी कुछ लेक्चर्स पहले भी हम लोगों ने कराए हैं, आगे भी कराएंगे। और हमें उम्मीद है कि इस तरह के लेक्चर्स और दूसरे भी तरह के जो लेक्चर्स हैं जो हमारे सेंटर्स के द्वारा आयोजित किए जाते हैं, जिसमें आप आते हैं, आगे भी आप इसी तरीके से आते रहेंगे। अगले प्रोग्राम की सूचना जल्द ही आपको मिल जाएगी। एक बार मैं फिर से त्रिपुरारी जी को और आप सभी लोगों को धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करता हूँ, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। अब चाय आप बीच में पी चुके हैं, इसलिए दोबारा चाय पीने की शायद आपकी इच्छा नहीं होगी, इसलिए उसका आग्रह मैं नहीं करूँगा।